Please watch the video until the end. Chapter 1. Arrival at La Serenella. They told me La Serenella had been shut for 50 years, a palazzo whose windows were mouths stitched shut with grime and time. An invitation arrived folded in a page from a forgotten ledger, handwritten by a voice that knew my name. Gabriel Moretti, journalist, skeptic, and apparently curiosity's latest prey. The host, a distant cousin of an eccentric playwright, had invited 10 guests for an evening he called a night to tidy up unsettled things. The address lay in a quarter of Venice that tourists never found. Gondoliers refused to navigate its canals after dusk. I arrived in the drizzle, the palazzo's stones darker than the sky. Machines hummed beyond the canal, construction, or perhaps the city's heartbeat. A servant with eyes like wet glass led us inside. The air tasted of damp paper and candle wax. The main room had been prepared for a masked ball. Chairs arranged in a circle, a low table with an ornate, tarnished mirror, and long drapes that swallowed shadows whole. On a pew lay a mask carved from bone, too small for comfort and carved with little cruel smiles. At the center of the circle sat the host, a lean man named Lorenzo Valeri, with the pallor of someone who kept terrible hours. He wore a mask that covered half his face like a promise not fully made. He welcomed us with a voice that might have been earnest, if earnest weren't such a dangerous thing in that house. He spoke of tragedies and house ghosts, of debts unpaid by silence. There was a tremor in his hands, and I watched the tremor more than his words. Chapter 2. The Circle and the Mirror. We were not entertainers. We were people with histories. A widow with a laugh like a torn curtain. A composer whose fingers never stopped tapping. A young actress who kept glancing at the walls as if they owed her money. I took the place opposite a childlike man named Marco, who introduced himself as a restorer of old texts. He had ink under his nails and the look of someone who reads things aloud even in his sleep. Lorenzo explained a ritual, nothing mystical, he insisted, intended to listen to the palazzo. A seance dressed in veneer, he called it. He set the mirror in the center and asked each of us to place a finger on its rim. Think of the one thing you cannot speak, he said. Let the house keep it with you, and perhaps it will give something back. I was not a believer. That did not stop the hair on my neck from rising when the room's air tightened. Candles guttered though no draft bent the flame. When my fingertips touched the cold edge of the mirror, I felt a pressure, like the hush of a throat clearing in the dark. Under my fingers the glass was not smooth. It pulsed faintly, as if with breath. Marco's knuckles went white. Across from me, the young actress turned as if someone had called her name, and then she began to weep, quietly at first, then in a way that was not woman or man, but an old bell pealing. The mirror showed our faces, pale and different, warped in edges where the candlelight could not reach. For a moment I thought I saw behind my reflection another city, one where canals ran backwards and the moon hung like a coin. Then the candles blew out as one, and in that blackness a sound unrolled. Soft steps from a hallway upstairs. Oldwood protesting. Chapter 3. Voices between the walls. Someone laughed, too close, and without a body. In the stowed dark, one of the guests reached for a candle, hands shivering like puppets on a string. When the light returned, a new figure had joined the circle. A woman in a morning dress nobody had seen walk in. She wore no mask, yet her face was featureless when I blinked, as if the room refused to commit. Is she part of your scheme? I demanded of Lorenzo, but he seemed as startled as the rest of us. We counted 10. The room had not gained a guest. People around me whispered histories, tragedies that had tested their steadiness, lost children, failed art, debts that couldn't be repaid with coins. That night the palazzo told us things slowly. The composer found a phrase he'd been searching for his whole life, written on the underside of the table in a child's hand. The widow described a voice that called her late husband's name, and then recited the address of a grave she had never visited. Marco, staring into the mirror, said he remembered a line of a book he had not read since his youth. Every revelation was a notch in the palazzo's hunger, an anecdote fed to a mouth that had been waiting. I saw the actress slip away toward the back stair. I followed, because when one lies to keep from being devoured by a house, you follow the ones who leave. On the landing, a wardrobe gaped open like a throat. Inside, hung among moth-eaten garments, was a dress stained with tiny pearls of rust, like tears frozen in copper. When I touched it, my hand smelled of water from another season, and a child's laughter bubbled up from the paneling behind me. Chapter 4. The Secret Room. We found the secret room by accident or by the palazzo's design. A false plaster, a seam in the wall like a healed scar, gave way beneath my palm. Behind it was a narrow chamber. No windows, just a chair and a small table on which sat a child's wooden toy and a photograph with the faces rubbed out. The photograph was of the house, or of a life tied to it, the past erased by deliberate hands. The air in that room hummed against my teeth. There were marks on the floor, childish footprints, as if someone had walked there yesterday and also a year ago. The wardrobe's dress belonged to a child, I realized then. The laughter had not been light at all. It had been hunger in a child's voice, and the house belonged to that hunger more truly than to any owner. At the far wall, etched into the plaster in a child's uneven script, were words I couldn't read at first. Under the wavering candlelight, I made them out. Don't let the masks lie. Masked things had taken residence in our faces. It was the house's feast to wear our fears like second skins. I felt the weight of accusation in those letters, and for the first time I understood Lorenzo's tremor. He had returned to make amends and perhaps to be forgiven. The palazzo needed an accounting. Chapter 5. The Play and the Price. When we returned to the sitting room, the host had changed. Lorenzo's mask was crushed under his hand. His eyes were not wild but glassy. He spoke of bargains and ledgers, of names and sums paid in promises. We try to tidy up, he said, voice flat, but the house is tidy only when it owns what it needs. That night the palazzo staged a small play. Each guest was compelled to confess into the mirror their deepest withheld thing. Not all confessions were true. Some were deliberate lies offered to appease the thing that listened. The actress, who had fled earlier, confessed to a theft she had not committed, then screamed in agony, as if the lie had torn her throat. The composer sang a bar of music that unraveled a memory none of us wanted to know. The widow laid her refusal to forgive at the mirror's feet, and then warned us about the small footprints. She liked to hide beneath beds until people forgot her, she whispered. At the circle's end, Marco pointed at me. He said my father had been too fond of coin and too fond of silence, that I had once let something pass unchallenged because it was easier to keep my hands clean. It was not entirely true, but Hugo's accusation fit the palazzo's appetite. The mirror drank my story with interest and coughed up a child's voice reciting a nursery rhyme backward, each syllable like a nail. Chapter 6. Unmasking. I billed myself a skeptic, and had always believed such houses owned only the gullible. Yet in La Serenella, the coals of reason burned small and thin. The mask from the table appeared under my pillow when I returned from fetching water, as if someone wanted me to see it there. I wore it for a moment, because belief can be contagious. The world became stranger through the small holes cut for eyes. Through the mask I saw the room change. Faces elongated into trophies, the drapes like rows of waiting corpses. The palazzo did not want us to leave with the truth. It wanted us to leave with a piece of it. The child who had lived and died in those walls wanted company. That hunger has many names: attention, memory, confession. And there is truth to the phrase, houses remember. I found the actress in the chapel, where ribbons still clung to pews. She was kneeling before a statue with its nose broken off. She looked at me and spoke as if from far away. "It wears our excuses," she said. "It takes what we leave on its table." Behind her, in the altar's shadow, something moved with the awkward steps of a small person. The room smelled of seawater and iron. Chapter 7. The Bridge and the Leaving. When dawn bled over the canal, we moved toward the bridge that would carry us back into a city that sold coffee and newsprint with the same hand. The palazzo settled around us, indifferent and satisfied as a predator that has eaten enough for the season. Lorenzo stood at the doorway and watched us go, as if counting coins he could no longer touch. We walked single file across the bridge under a sky that did not accept the palazzo story. At the far end, I looked back and thought I saw, behind a shuttering, the small silhouette of a child waving a hand that was more like a shadow than the real thing. Then the shutters closed and the building was only stone and roof once more, as if the night had been a trick. It was only later, weeks later, when a package arrived at my desk, wrapped in the same paper as the invitation, that I understood the price. Inside lay a small bone mask and a photograph of La Serenella with the faces rubbed out, and on the back, written the child's uneven script, "Keep the lights on." The mask fit my hand now, though I had not worn it, and sometimes, when a canal fog settles and the city grows quiet, I think I hear a child's footsteps in the ceiling above my apartment. The house does not need to be near to be hungry. If you enjoyed this tale, please subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, give the video a like, leave a comment, and share the video.